So picture this. It's 1991, and Stan Lee and director Sam Raimi walk into 20th Century Fox.
Oh, man, what a meeting that must have been.
Right, and they pitch this movie about a Norse god who swings a magic hammer. And the executives basically just laugh them out of the room.
Yeah, they completely failed to grasp the concept, and the whole project was just dumped.
Dumped entirely. But if you fast forward 20 years, that exact same ridiculous concept becomes this, $500 million linchpin of modern cinema.
It's honestly a staggering turnaround.
It really is. So today we are taking a deep dive into the chaotic 20-year development history of Marvel's Thor.
And there is a lot of chaos to cover.
So much chaos. And really, if you've ever been handed a massive, unwieldy project at work where the tone is totally elusive and the moving parts just refuse to align, this deep dive is for you.
Because this movie is basically a masterclass in finding the exact right tone.
Yes, and pulling in the exact right people to make the impossible work. So let's start with that 1991 pitch. Why was it so utterly rejected?
Well, it highlights this fundamental misunderstanding of the character at the time. When Raimi pitched it, superhero movies were basically just Batman or Superman.
Right. Very straightforward vigilantes or aliens in spandex.
Exactly. The idea of taking ancient mythology and translating it into a modern superhero framework, it just didn't compute for studio executives.
It's too weird for them.
Way too weird. So the property essentially enters industry purgatory. For years, it just bounces around without any cohesive vision.
And didn't it almost become a TV movie at one point?
Yeah. By the year 2000, it was actually being developed as a made-for-TV movie for the UPN network.
Wait, UPN? Like the network that had all those syndicated sci-fi shows in the 90s?
That's the one.
Trying to launch a sprawling mythological epic on a UPN television budget that's like trying to stage a Broadway musical in a fast food parking lot.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
Yeah.
It completely ignores the scale of what makes the character work in the first place.
It just sounds like a project with zero core identity.
Absolutely zero. And of course, the UPN idea inevitably collapses. Then the film rights drift over to Artisan Entertainment, and then to Sony Pictures around 2004.
Where David S. Goyer was attached to write and direct, right?
Right, but he eventually walks away too. It wasn't until 2006 that Paramount Pictures and Marvel Studios step in.
Okay, so Marvel is finally in the driver's seat.
Sort of. They hire writer Mark Protosevich to draft a script. But even then, they're swinging wildly in the dark.
How so?
Well, Protosevich writes this massive, sprawling epic where Odin banishes Thor to Earth during the Middle Ages.
Whoa! The Middle Ages.
Yeah, and Thor ends up enslaved by Vikings.
Okay, a Middle Ages Viking epic. Sounds kind of cool, actually, but that budget had to be astronomical.
Oh, it was estimated at around $300 million.
Good grief.
Yeah. And in the mid-2000s, for an untested comic book property, that is a completely unviable number.
So what did Marvel do?
They brought in director Matthew Vaughn. And his primary mandate was essentially to slash that script down to a $150 million budget.
Which rarely works out well. When you try to edit a massive encyclopedia down to a pamphlet, you don't just lose pages.
Right, you lose the whole structure.
Exactly, you lose the core narrative.
Yeah.
So how did Vaughn handle it?
Well, he didn't, really. He was under a holding deal, which is where a studio pays talent to stay exclusive to them while a project develops.
Gotcha.
But the holding deal expired and Vaughn just left. So then Guillermo del Toro steps in.
Oh, wow. Del Toro doing Thor.
Right. He loved the original Jack Kirby comic art, but he wanted to strip away the superhero gloss entirely.
That sounds like classic Del Toro. What was his pitch?
He envisioned this really dingy Valhalla with Vikings and mud.
Mud and Vikings.
Yeah, but he ultimately left to direct The Hobbit instead. But just look at the whiplash here.
It's crazy. You go from a low-budget TV movie to a $300 million medieval epic to a muddy, dingy fantasy film.
The tone is just all over the map.
Honestly, it sounds like the primary obstacle wasn't even the budget. It sounds like nobody could figure out how to ground the tone.
That's exactly it.
Because dropping a literal Norse god into a modern world sounds incredibly silly on paper. How do you make someone who lives in a golden space castle relatable to a normal audience?
You have to find a thematic anchor.
Yeah.
And the breakthrough finally came when Mark Protosevich reframed the entire character arc.
Okay, what was his pivot?
He stopped looking at it as a superhero origin story, and he pitched it as the story of an Old Testament god who becomes a New Testament god.
Oh, wow. That is a phenomenal piece of framing.
Isn't it?
Yeah. You start with this vengeful, wrathful, smiting deity, and over the course of 2 hours, you force him to transform into a figure of sacrifice and grace.
Exactly. And Ashley Miller, who later co-wrote the screenplay, expanded on this perfectly. He argued that the audience really needs to see the dirt, the grime, and the blood early on.
Because to make a god relatable, he has to become a man who bleeds.
Right. A man who bleeds and struggles. Thor is banished to Earth specifically because he's brash and arrogant.
So the film requires this visceral, emotional reaction to his arrogance, not just clean antiseptic action sequences.
Exactly. The action has to serve the emotional downfall.
But knowing your theme is one thing. Actually executing an Old Testament to New Testament character arc in a post-Iron Man world where audiences expect grounded, slick technology, that's a huge challenge.
It's a massive risk.
And this is where Marvel makes this wildly unconventional choice. They didn't hire a traditional summer blockbuster action director.
No, in late 2008, they hired Kenneth Branagh.
Kenneth Branagh, the filmmaker practically synonymous with William Shakespeare.
The guy who spent his career adapting and starring in films like Henry V and Hamlet.
On the surface, handing him a Marvel comic book movie must have seemed baffling to Hollywood insiders.
Oh, completely baffling. But when you look at the mechanics of the story, it is absolute genius.
I hope so.
Well, J. Michael Straczynski, who worked on the story, pointed out that Thor's dialogue and the drama of Asgard naturally lean toward a classical theater style.
That makes sense. It's very grandiose.
Right. And if you hand that kind of dialogue to a director who only knows how to shoot car chases, it's going to sound completely artificial. It would be super campy.
So Branagh was basically the perfect countermeasure to the absurdity of the premise.
Exactly. He treated the Asgardian royal family, Odin, Thor, and Loki, with the exact same reverence and dramatic weight as the royals in King Lear or Henry IV.
You have the aging king, the brash heir apparent, and the deeply jealous younger sibling.
Yes. And by anchoring the narrative in emotional volatility and familial betrayal, the sci-fi and magical elements just become secondary.
The audience gets invested in the human drama, not the space magic. They essentially Trojan horsed a classical family tragedy into a summer popcorn flick.
That's exactly what they did. And the actors clearly thrived under this framework. Look at Anthony Hopkins, who played Odin.
Right, a legendary actor in his own right.
Hopkins said he and Branagh developed a Shakespearean shorthand on set.
What does that mean, practically?
It means instead of spending hours discussing character motivation, they can just chat for a few minutes between takes, reference classical archetypes, and just instantly lock into the emotional subtext.
That is so efficient. Kevin Feige, the head of Marvel, even went so far as to compare the film's intended tone to The Godfather, right?
He did, which sounds crazy because they're very different genres. But mechanically, both are fundamentally stories about fathers and sons.
And the heavy consequences of a patriarch's actions.
Right, actions that his children are ultimately forced to answer for.
And Hopkins clearly found a deep personal resonance there. He described Odin as a stern, ruthless man who banishes his son out of profound disappointment.
Yeah, he really connected with it.
He even compared the character to his own father. He described his dad as a cold man who expressed a similar disappointment when Hopkins was young.
Wow.
He literally stated, "I'm a little like Odin myself."
That is so telling. And that level of dramatic gravity is the only reason the film doesn't collapse under its own weight. But here is the critical project management lesson. A Shakespearean framework only functions if you have the cast capable of carrying that specific theatrical weight.
You can build the perfect stage, but if the actors don't understand the tone, the play still fails.
Exactly. Which brings us to the casting process.
Which sounds like an absolute gauntlet. I mean, finding someone who can believably play a Norse god and hold their own in a classical family drama.
They tested practically everyone in Hollywood. The casting lists included Charlie Hunnam, Alexander Skarsgård, Channing Tatum.
That's a wild mix of guys.
Yeah, and Alan Ritchson auditioned but reportedly lost out because he didn't take the grueling process seriously enough.
Oh, man. And then there's Chris Hemsworth, who, fascinatingly, was initially rejected.
Passed over entirely.
Why? What happened?
Well, Hemsworth was just a 25-year-old actor at the time, and he didn't quite land the initial read. Partly because it's a massive commitment. Signing a multi-picture studio deal is daunting.
Right, you're signing your life away.
Yeah. And Marvel even brought in his younger brother, Liam Hemsworth, and tested him extensively before Kevin Feige ultimately passed on him, too.
It wasn't until much later that Chris was brought back in for a second chance.
Right. They realized their first instinct was the correct one, but they had to exhaust all other options to be sure.
Typical Hollywood. But Hemsworth didn't just walk onto the set. He completely rebuilt his physicality to fit that visceral tone Ashley Miller talked about.
He really did. He gained 20 pounds of pure muscle, and he noted he had barely ever lifted weights before this role.
Which is insane to think about now. And his inspiration for how Thor fought was brilliant. He didn't look at other sword and sandal epics.
Yeah, who did he look at?
He modeled Thor's movements on Mike Tyson.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Right. That choice does so much heavy lifting for the character's psychology. Hemsworth noticed that Tyson stayed very low to the ground, utilizing a big open chest and these massive shoulder swings.
So it's a brutal, bone-crunching style of combat, but it possesses a strange grace to it.
Exactly. It communicates to the audience immediately that this is not a clean, polished hero. This is a brawler.
A literal god in a bar fight. And Hemsworth also made the specific choice to adopt a British accent, right?
Yeah, aligning with the theatrical tone Branagh established. Hemsworth actually noted that using his natural Australian accent would have accidentally steered the character into a Crocodile Dundee parody.
Oh, that would have been a totally different movie.
That's not a hammer, this is a hammer.
Exactly.
Now, think about how this next piece of the puzzle applies to your own work. Have you ever hired someone for one specific task only to realize their true value lies in solving a completely different problem?
Oh, you're talking about Tom Hiddleston.
Yes, the actor who basically defined the modern blockbuster villain as Loki. He originally auditioned, bulked up, and tested to play Thor.
He did. And Hiddleston actually had a working history with Kenneth Branagh in theater and television before this.
So Branagh knew what he was capable of.
Exactly. During the audition process, Branagh recognized a specific quality in Hiddleston and actively pivoted him away from the hero and toward the antagonist.
That's a massive pivot.
It is. Branagh wanted Loki to possess a lean and hungry look. That's a direct quote referencing the treacherous character Cassius from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar.
So Hiddleston had to lose all that Thor weight.
Yeah, he was put on a strict diet to strip away the bulk, physically separating the two brothers on screen.
Branagh was just pulling entirely from his classical toolbox. He even instructed Hiddleston to study Peter O'Toole's legendary performances in films like Lawrence of Arabia and The Lion in Winter.
And Hiddleston absorbed that perfectly. He analyzed how O'Toole in The Lion in Winter played a character who seemed to live with a layer of skin entirely peeled away.
A very raw, exposed performance.
Yes. Grandiose and tearful one moment, terrifying and unpredictable the next. That emotional volatility is the secret ingredient to Loki.
Let me push back on the impact of that, though. I mean, blockbusters have had great villains before. Was Hiddleston's performance really the glue holding this specific movie together, or was he just giving a great theatrical performance in a vacuum?
Oh, no. If you look at the mechanics of the script, Hiddleston's Loki is the emotional load-bearing wall of the entire film.
How so?
Well, in most superhero movies of that era, the villain was just a dark mirror of the hero, right? A disposable obstacle to be punched in the third act.
Like Ironmonger and Iron Man.
Exactly. But Loki is a neglected, adopted son discovering a horrific truth about his lineage. Hiddleston even referred to the role as the comic book version of Edmund from King Lear.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Because he grounded the villain in genuine, agonizing vulnerability. The audience actually cares about the central conflict. Without that specific, skin-peeled-away performance, the stakes are literally just two aliens hitting each other.
Right. So the Asgardian drama is locked in. But to make this movie work, the Earth storyline needs an equal amount of gravitational pull.
Which brings us to Natalie Portman as Jane Foster.
Yes. And the circumstances of her casting really speak volumes about how Branagh's reputation shifted the perception of this whole project. Portman signed on before a script was even finished.
Which is wild. An Academy Award-caliber actress committing to a comic book movie without a script was practically unheard of at the time.
So why did she do it?
She did it because she found the combination of Kenneth Branagh and big-budget superhero cinema to be this super weird idea that she desperately wanted to explore.
She just wanted to see what would happen.
Basically, yeah. And her presence immediately signaled to the rest of the industry and to the audience that the earthbound scenes were not going to be disposable filler.
We should also mention the casting of Idris Elba as Heimdall, the stoic sentry of the Bifrost Bridge. because according to our sources, this actually caused a pretty massive media stir at the time.
It did, yeah. A group called the Council of Conservative Citizens actually proposed a boycott.
Over Elba's casting.
Right. It sparked an online debate complaining that a black actor shouldn't be playing a Nordic mythological figure.
And obviously, as always, we remain completely neutral on the politics here. We're just reporting the production hurdles outlined in the sources. But Elba handled it in a very specific way, didn't he?
Yeah, he navigated it by simply refusing to give it any oxygen. He just called the debate ridiculous.
Which is fair.
And he pointed out the absolute absurdity of debating historical accuracy in a movie featuring, flying men and magic hammers.
Right, it's not a documentary.
Exactly. And he took the role for the exact same reason Portman did. Kenneth Branagh personally called him and asked him to do it.
It all comes back to Branagh. His gravity as a classical filmmaker pulled in a cast that treated inherently silly material with absolute undeniable seriousness.
Yes. But even with all that, they still faced one massive structural hurdle.
Bridging the gap between ancient Norse myth and modern reality.
Exactly. The audience and the human characters in the film need a logical reason to buy into what they are seeing.
And this is where Marvel made a structural shift that fundamentally changed how Hollywood approaches world building.
Yeah, to ground the concept of Asgardian magic, Marvel didn't just invent science fiction jargon. They actually reached out to the Science and Entertainment Exchange.
Which is a real program run by the National Academy of Sciences.
Right. Marvel brought in actual physicists, like Sean Carroll and Kevin Hand, to consult directly with Branagh and the writers.
That is incredible. They essentially hired scientists to fact-check a fantasy script about a space Viking.
They did. And this consultation led to some vital character upgrades. In the original comics, Jane Foster was a nurse. But after working with the Science Exchange, they elevated her profession to a particle astrophysicist.
And Portman was a massive advocate for this change.
Huge advocate. She dove into the biographies of female scientists to prepare. She specifically drew inspiration from Rosalind Franklin.
The scientist whose work was critical to discovering the DNA double helix.
Exactly, but who famously didn't receive the credit she deserved. Portman wanted Jane to have genuine intellectual weight, not just to serve as a romantic foil. She wanted to show young girls that they could be serious, integral drivers of the plot.
Not just, as she put it, dressed cute in movies.
Right. So they upgraded the human characters, but they also upgraded the magic itself.
Like the Bifrost.
Yes, the magical rainbow bridge that connects Asgard to Earth. Suddenly, the human scientists in the film are describing it as an Einstein-Rosen bridge, which is the theoretical physics term for a wormhole.
Okay, let me stop you there, though. We are talking about a guy who flies by spinning a magic hammer.
Sure.
Does swapping the word magic portal for Einstein-Rosen bridge actually make anyone believe this, or is it just slapping a lab coat on a wizard?
Well, it's not about tricking the audience into thinking the hammer is scientifically real. It's about establishing a unified rule set for the cinematic universe.
A shared logic.
Right. Thor has a critical line in the film where he tells Jane that where he comes from, magic and science are one and the same. By utilizing actual astrophysical concepts, the film seamlessly transitions Asgard from a realm of pure fantasy into an advanced sci-fi civilization.
Ah, I see.
And this was the mechanical key to the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. If Thor was purely magical, it would make absolutely no sense for him to stand next to the technology-based Iron Man.
They would feel like characters from two entirely different movies.
Exactly. The science consultation provided the connective tissue that allowed these vastly different franchises to coexist in the same reality.
So we've dissected the anatomy of this massive pivot. They took a concept that Fox laughed at in 1991. They anchored it with the thematic weight of an Old Testament God seeking redemption.
They deployed the Trojan horse of Branagh's Shakespearean tragedy to give it stakes.
Right. They cast actors who could deliver vulnerability over brute strength. And they integrated real astrophysics to bridge the gap to their larger universe.
It's a monumental effort.
So did this meticulous, chaotic, 20-year project actually pay off when it finally hit theaters in May 2011?
Well, by every financial metric, yes. The film grossed nearly $450 million worldwide, becoming one of the highest-grossing films of that year.
And critically?
Critically, it performed well, too, securing a 77% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Reviewers like Richard Roper highlighted it as the most entertaining superhero debut since the original Spider-Man.
High praise.
He specifically praised the unexpected charm of Chris Hemsworth's performance, too.
But it wasn't universally praised. And this brings us to a cynical, fascinating debate that really still dominates the industry today. The legendary film critic Roger Ebert completely rejected the movie.
Oh, his review was absolutely scathing.
He called the film a failure as a movie, but a success as marketing.
Ouch.
Yeah, he compared the entire production to an ancient carnival tactic. He was essentially accusing the filmmakers of telling the rubes anything just to trick them into walking inside the tent.
And Ebert's critique is cutting because it challenges the very nature of what the film is trying to be.
What do you mean?
He's arguing that despite the Shakespearean overtones and the dedicated performances, the film lacks standalone artistic integrity. He viewed it less as a self-contained story and more as a highly produced mechanism designed to sell products.
Or, more accurately, to sell the next movie.
Exactly.
Which perfectly frames the film's post-credits scene. After the story concludes, we see Stellan Skarsgård's character, Erik Selvig, being led into a subterranean SHIELD facility.
Right, with Nick Fury.
Yes, Nick Fury opens a steel briefcase to reveal a glowing blue cube, the Tesseract. And then the camera reveals that an invisible Loki is whispering in Selvig's ear, manipulating him into studying it.
And this scene wasn't even directed by Kenneth Branagh.
No, it was directed by Joss Whedon. And it functions as a literal, undisguised advertisement for the 2012 film The Avengers.
It is the ultimate franchise hook.
Oh.
And it really leaves us with a profound tension to consider.
It really does. I mean, we just spent this entire deep dive looking at the incredible lengths the crew went to, layering classical drama, pulling raw emotion from Hopkins and Hiddleston, elevating the science with Natalie Portman.
A tremendous amount of genuine artisanal craft went into saving this project from development hell.
But it concludes with a scene explicitly designed to sell you a ticket to a completely different franchise.
It begs the question.
Exactly. So we leave you with this final thought to mull over. Was Roger Ebert actually right? When a piece of media concludes with a literal teaser trailer for the next corporate installment, where exactly is the line drawn between genuine storytelling and franchise marketing?
Are we watching standalone modern-day myths that explore the complexities of fathers, sons, and the burden of power?
Or are we just sitting in the carnival tent watching highly produced commercials for the next attraction?
It is the defining question of the modern blockbuster era. You can build a beautiful, intricate, emotionally resonant skyscraper. But does the architecture really matter if the entire building is ultimately just a billboard?
It's a question worth asking the next time you find yourself trying to hold together a chaotic project of your own, or the next time you buy a ticket to the tent.